Usually, countries can sponsor a resolution. For instance, I know Malawi sponsored a resolution on the age of sexual debut for teenagers, for instance. So you can decide as a country what your priorities are, and then your representatives at the United Nations, the diplomats, the ones you send there, can actually sponsor a resolution. And then the resolution is debated by all the countries present. And then depending on what the outcome is, it could be ratified, signed and ratified. But you see, sometimes we tend to underestimate the importance of those resolutions. We tend to say, okay, we're negotiating, let's give in, let's give in. The danger there is that these resolutions are what determines funding priorities. So if we give in to certain things, then a lot of money goes in there. And then that money, whereas in Africa we have our priorities. I remember once at the UN, they were debating clean water for Africa, which seems relevant. Do you understand? But the point being made by some of the African delegates is, why are we debating clean water for Africa? We haven't even talked about making water available in the first place before we begin to talk about clean water for Africa. And then the tricky things about these resolutions is that you have to read the finer prints, those tiny prints. Because what they tend to do is, they come up with a good thing. For instance, violence against women and children. Everybody will say yes. Women amongst us will say yes. We experience violence in our homes, there's violence with spouses, there's violence everywhere. So it seems good at first sight. But by the time you begin to study that bill or that resolution, you see that it's not just talking about violence against women and children, but it's talking about women's right to determine confrontation with a man, just to put it in simplistic terms. All right? It's not about complementarity in marriage. It's confrontation. Women, putting their rights out there and not thinking that what I have to do is to think about my duties towards my husband, and then my husband on the other hand thinks of his duties towards me, rather than a clash of rights where everybody feels a sense of entitlement. And then when you read deeper, you see that this thing is about LGBT rights. It's not just about violence against women and girls. It's about LGBTs, rights of lesbians to live in a relationship if they so wish, and surrogacy and what have you. So that's why we really need to help our governments, because sometimes they may not even have the time to read the tiny prints. And sometimes even their positions are compromised. I tell you, there's a lot of blackmailing, a lot of bullying and bribery going on even at the UN. There's a lot of corruption there. We talk about corruption in Africa, but there's a lot of moral corruption over there. So I think the important thing is, we in Africa, we know what our priorities are. So we have to take center stage. We are 54 countries. We're not a country, we're a continent. 54 or 55 countries make up Africa. That's a huge voting bloc. So we need to determine what our priorities are and then put those things across and not cave in easily. There are many organizations out there to help us. Family Watch is always there at the UN, out there to help us. CFAM, you name it. There's so many good organizations, who are there to help us. And so, before we sign off these things, let us determine what our priorities are. But even if mistakes are made at the UN and they sign off these things, they cannot be domesticated in our countries because you, the legislators, are very powerful. The parliament is so powerful. You are the lawmakers. So you can push back these things. So I hope that answers the question to some extent.